hammering a GT3. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back at Response Motors on the GT3 build. So far we've managed to remove the front suspension, pretty much all the major hardware on the front end, but now we're going to dive in a bit more in the details. We're going to clean up some of the extra accessories here, get them off the car, and start getting ready to pull off the front structure. So today we're going to begin with removing the windshield wiper mechanism, the cowl. We'll probably get to the battery. This is actually the charcoal and EVAP system for the fuel tank. So we're going to take a look at getting that off. And here is your cabin air filter. So we're going to pull that as well. Once we do this, we should be able to get at that fuel tank and get it out of here. So if you haven't done this already, click that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, because you're not going to want to miss any of the action as we progress on putting this GT3 back on the road. All right, guys, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull off these wipers, and then we're going to go ahead and take off the cowl and the wiper mechanism. So let's go ahead and get started with that, and I'll show you how it's done. A lot of times when you're removing wipers, there's a flange at the bottom here. They actually get compressed down on a cone. So you got to kind of rock them back and forth, and then they'll pop up. Or they're supposed to. Yeah. Okay, so these are being a real pain. So there's a little cone and they press down real hard. So they're just not coming up. So I'm actually using a valve spring compressor to pop them off. So usually wouldn't need to do this, but this should pop it up. There it goes. Wiper off. So you can see inside here, it's a little bit corroded. So that's probably why it was stuck. All right, now that I got the wipers off, I'm gonna go ahead and pull off the cowl, this plastic cowl, and then we'll remove the wiper mechanism. Trick to pulling these connectors, by the way, is if you just take a flathead, you slide it in, twist a little bit, and you'll hear a click, and it just pops right out. I've had so much trouble getting these off over the years, I finally figured out the best way to pull them off. So you're welcome. All right, we removed the front windshield wiper mechanism, and now we're going to take out the tire repair kit holder, the battery, the EVAP and charcoal canister for the fuel system, and then we're going to take out the cabin air filter and holder. Hopefully, once that's done, we'll be able to drop that fuel tank. So stick with me, and let's get to it. Now they got the airbox open up, I figured I'd give you a quick tour what's inside a 992 airbox. So this is the cabin air filter here. We change these usually every time it comes in for an oil change, which is about once a year or every 10,000 miles. And it's important to keep this thing clean because this is really one of the only things keeping bad air from coming in. You can see this one's a little dirty even though this car only has about 3,500 miles on it. The other thing to note is you want to make sure you keep this area clean. So when you're opening your frunk, you're cleaning out, doing any detailing, make sure you just tidy up around here because this is your main cabin air intake. So this damper actually goes into the cabin, and if you let things get in here, it is very, very hard to get them out. So keep that clean and you'll be good. Now we're going to remove the airbox, and there's a front strut tower brace here. So this is actually the strut tower, and this brace goes to the firewall. So this is to help reinforce the front end of the car. So we'll pull this guy off first, and then we'll undo those 3 bolts, and this whole air cleaner box should come right off. So let's get to it. When we pulled out the front air box, we noticed a couple things. When the vehicle was at the Copart lot, looks like a mouse decided to make this area its home and left quite a lot of droppings behind. So they're all down in here. There's even some extra little rocks and sticks and stuff from when he was making his home. So I'm gonna go ahead, put on a mask and get all this stuff vacuumed up and cleaned out before we remove this battery. Whenever you're dealing with cars that have sat outside or sat around for a while, more than likely you're gonna have a rodent or something that has made its home inside the vehicle and left some droppings. So when you're cleaning this stuff up, it's really important to wear proper safety equipment. This stuff is pretty hazardous and it's nasty, so glasses, gloves, and get yourself a good respirator. You can pick these up any hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, what have you. So we're gonna put all this on, pull out that battery, and clean up all these droppings before we continue. Okay, we cleaned it up a little bit, so it's a bit better now. There was still some around that I can't quite get to, but let's go ahead, pull out the battery tray. So there's 3 triple square bolts here. We'll lift that out, and then next we're gonna attack the fuel tank. So this is actually the fuel tank in the front here of the Porsches. So it sits underneath this and butts up against the firewall. So that's where the tank is on this car. And luckily it's actually held together even though it's been crashed twice in the front, other than a few scuffs. It's not leaking any gas. So let's go ahead and get that battery tray out, and then we'll look at taking the tank out. So underneath the battery, we found this guy. So this is actually the fuel pump controller for the fuel tank. We're gonna take a look at pulling the fuel tank now. So let me show you a couple things you wanna take a look at before you pull the fuel tank. Take a look here. This is your main fuel feed line. This goes back to the engine. This is your return line, and this guy actually comes up to the charcoal canister and everything up here. So this is your EVAP system on the car. This is your fuel pump plug, and this is going to be for your fuel sender. So this is where you get all your gauge readings. That guy powers your pump, and this goes to the controller that was plugged in right here. So what we're going to do, because we don't know how much fuel is in the car, we're going to pull off the main feed line and hook up a transfer pump to it. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll show you the process. First things first, there's a little yellow clip here. We're going to pull this guy off. There it goes. So this again goes down to the bottom of your tank. So we got our fuel hose here. So we're gonna stick our fuel hose on the top. Conveniently, this is actually off of the 911. All right, so we got the line hooked up. We've got a fuel pump here from a BMW, and oddly enough, we've got some 911 fuel line sitting here. So got it hooked up to our battery pack. This is the same one we use to jump cars. So it provides 12 volts to the fuel pump, and then we got the line running into a catch can. So we can cycle this on and off if needed. So let me go ahead and turn it on. You hear the fuel pump turn on. So we're sucking out fuel. So it looks like actually the tank might be pretty empty. We pulled out a little bit when I first turned it on. And they probably drained it at some point when it was either at its last facility or at the auction site. So looks like we're good to go. So I'm gonna shut it off. And now we're gonna go ahead and drop the tank. Oh. So what I found is pretty interesting. What I thought were rat droppings, but I noticed they were like kind of pellet shaped. Turns out our EVAP canister here, which has a charcoal filter in it, is ejecting charcoal pellets all over the place. So that hole right there is where the pellets are coming from. So it's not rat droppings, thank goodness. These are actually charcoal. So this is activated carbon that sits inside this thing and filters out all the vapors and stuff. So that's good news. Bad news is our EVAP canister is very broken. So I'm gonna have to pull this out, replace it. I guess it got damaged in the accident when the whole fuel tank was hit. Looks like it pushed everything back, and that's why we got a crack here. So we'll finish dropping this tank, clean this up, and take a better look around what happened in the front. So let's take a look at how this guy's mounted. We got a strap holding it down. So a couple bolts here. And these straps are supposed to be connected, but they were taken out during the accident. And you can see there's some scuffs and everything where it got hit and pushed up into the car. So we'll undo the strap. There's a few bolts in the back here that we'll undo, and hopefully it just comes down. So we'll throw a support underneath and then get this thing lowered down. So as I'm starting to pull apart the tank, I noticed that the frunk has actually been pushed into the front of the tank. So luckily it hasn't gone through, but I'm gonna need to bend all this metal out of the way because now there's really nothing holding the tank in. I pulled all the straps out, all the bolts are out, so there's some foam. We got our jack here just in case there's fuel in there we missed, or we didn't end up sucking it out. We thought we did, just in case it's super heavy, don't want it to fall. But looks like this flange here in the front of the car is actually bent into the tank. So I'm gonna pry that off and hopefully this thing will just fall right out. Since I'm not gonna be using this tank again, I'm going to use a giant pry bar and a hammer, and we're gonna bend all this metal out of the way. So let's get going. Let's see if we can't just get this up here. That worked pretty well. This is gonna be fun. Oh yeah. Hey! Success! Are you all right?
Yeah. It's still stuck.
It's still in there.
Good, well, because there's no weight to pull it down. It's truly empty.
Well, it's stuck on the, it's more metal in a way. And the steering shaft is like shoved into it. Okay. I was gonna go to the gym today, but I think now, let's see. All right.
I think we should both carry this.
Yeah.
I think I could probably just carry this. Yeah.
After a hell of a lot of pain, here's the fuel tank. So not in terrible shape given it was crashed and shoved into the car and the entire front end wrapped around the fuel tank. It seems like the fuel tank saved the passenger cell because if we look up here, this is the front of the passenger footwell right behind the gas tank, and it's pretty good. So we look at the front right here, no damage, all the welds, the seam sealer's fine. There's really not much going on here. If it wasn't for this, which is where the subframe bolts in, I could say we might even been able to save the front. but best to just put a new front on anyway, because we don't really know after the first accident what happened here, given this was completely bent around the fuel tank. Up next, we're gonna go ahead and remove the brake system, and then we'll be able to start work on the inside. All right, that's it for today. We did a lot on the GT3, including removing pretty much everything in the front. So we got the ABS module out, the fuel tank out, the air filters, the charcoal canister, and a few other odds and ends. So in order to finish removing this brake master cylinder, we actually have to take it off from the inside. So up next, we're gonna start pulling out that interior. So if you haven't already, click that subscribe button because you don't wanna miss any of the action.